Hi guys, Prime here. Recently on the PTR we got some news about the Smite story, the direction it's heading in, and apparently it's going to pretty much be the next event. So the event itself will be called Divine Uprising, and unlike a lot of other events, it's going to include a T5 skin for Bologna. And whether or not you actually agree with the way you're going to actually be able to purchase these skins and the gambly aspect that it's going to include, we're going to focus on the lore. Bologna will be the chosen goddess that will be traveling with us through the story, and so today we're going to be talking about it, maybe speculating, finding out everything we can about it, and explaining it as much as possible. Just to give you a quick heads up on what's going on in the story, Zeus is dead, Al Kwang's dead, Anher's dead, Anubis is dead, Ganesh is dead, and Mercury is dead. Chuck is also dead, and technically Ganesh is unconfirmed. They're either in Hell, Hades, or some other underworld that exists within the world of Smite. Or perhaps a combination of all of the underworlds, it's not 100% explained. Egypt is recovering from the war/battle that went on when Ares was pretty upset and decided to attack the country. The Nordic realms seem to be recovering from the conflicts that were happening at previous points of the story, including Odin, Thor, and Fenrir and Ymir and all the giants' assault on Asgard, we're assuming. Or Hel is ruling over those realms as she sees fit. Hades is ruling from the thrones of Olympus. The Jade Emperor probably is still refusing to do anything as far as we know. Gods know what Izanagi and Izanami are doing, but Izanami is free and is said to, cause a bit of chaos and conflict when she is free. Parvati and or Shiva probably aren't too happy about the death of their son, Ganesh, so we'll probably see them introduced or mentioned within the story. Perhaps Ram or Kumbhakarna will be doing something in the story as well. Hebo is probably likely getting pretty weak, and Sun Wukong is probably getting about ready to do some more things within the story. The Mayan people might be in a spot of bother because Chuck was slain by Ares and Ares did make rain fall, but Ares has gone on to other things now. Is he still providing vital nourishment for these people, or has he forgotten them? Assuming that this is the case and the Mayan societies perish, not only do the Mayans lose out on a bunch of worshippers, i.e. we're talking about the Mayan gods now, the only ones who would not mind this at all are probably those deities of Xibalba, being Apwash and of course everyone's favourite, Camazotz. Ares is actually being a good god of rain, or pseudo-god of rain I suppose, and providing them with enough rain, so much so that either A, they'll join the conflict on the Greeks' behalf, or B, they can just ignore the conflict. But either way, the Mayan gods of death, Xibalba, Camazotz, Apwash, they aren't worried about this conflict at all, with the underworld being so full of new mortals. Thanks to this new crisis, apocalyptic, Ragnarok-esque setting that we're being introduced to with this new story, the new direction of the story, those two gods are really happy. And unless Awilix cares much for the death of Chuck, well, I don't see the Mayan gods doing all that much. As Hi-Rez are including 3 new pantheons with this new direction of the story, it wouldn't surprise me if the Mayan pantheon gets a bit ignored or pushed to the wayside a bit. Bit like how the Celtic pantheon hasn't been mentioned in anything in-game, other than, Artio got that skin, and Kernanos got that skin. That was pretty much it. There might have been a bit of, like written text about them that I missed, because, well, I missed it. And I'm sure a lot of you guys missed it as well. I suppose we'll just have to see what Hi-Rez has in their little bag of goodness. Hell has pretty much started Ragnarok in a bid to either take over the world or destroy everything. Now, it'll be interesting to find out whether or not Zeus and co. will either be imprisoned because she did make an enemy out of not just Zeus but also Al Kwang, her previous accomplice. She's not exactly friends with Mercury, and probably not on her either. Definitely not Anubis, and Ganesh. Who knows where he'll stand. Ganesh seems like the pretty much forgive and forget type, so we'll just have to see. But the only reason I say that this wasn't handled too well was purely for the fact that A, I forgot that Chuck was even dead, and B, because it's only mentioned briefly, it's fairly forgettable. It's used to introduce the Mayans into the conflict, and the Mayans don't really play that much of an important role. I mean, the story in and of itself is fairly short and centers mostly around the Greek and Norse pantheons anyway, which isn't a bad thing necessarily, but those 2 pantheons get, the most, and the Egyptian, I suppose. Those 3 pantheons are, take the center stage of the story, and all the other pantheons, they take more of a back seat, shall we say. This whole carnage situation suits every single one of the gods of death, because the more souls that die, it seems, if we can just judge by Hades' actions in the previous Ragnarok event, the more people that die is just the stronger these gods of the underworld become, because it's like a free patron for them, right? I'm guessing. Actually, no, I'm not guessing, because that was one of the conflicts that appeared in one of the comics. So no, I'm pretty sure that's how it works. But another interesting point that hasn't been brought up is the gods of the earth and gods of nature. They are definitely either furious or not particularly pleased with this turn of events. So I'm guessing Terra, Geb, and other gods of the earth, as well as gods like Artio and Artemis, are either getting ready to join the fight, or ready to defend themselves or the planet in some way, shape, or form. And before you bring up that they're supposed to be gods of nature, perhaps peaceful and, models of non-violent individuals, well, no. Artemis was pretty vengeful, and just to give you an example, Hercules might have accidentally damaged a boar. Okay, it wasn't an accident, and it wasn't necessarily a boar, it might have been a deer, but an animal sacred to Artemis is the point. Artemis was so unhappy that she spoke to Hercules about this, and found out that he was ordered to do so by a certain king, Eurythesus, and so she goes all the way over to Eurythesus, tells him off, essentially, is a nice way to put it. That's not the worst thing Artemis has done purely for revenge. Terra was so unhappy with Zeus that she began another Titan conflict, and Geb was so mad at Ra in certain variations of Geb's story because he split up Ra and Nut, his wife, or was responsible for the two of them splitting, that he goes all the way over to Ra's land, potentially, causes a bunch of havoc there, destroys a bunch of things, and might also have wronged his mother in a certain way. Point is, these gods are fairly vengeful, so if that doesn't come up as a plot point, I'll be personally a little disappointed, but we'll see. Now there's a chance that they'll join Bellona, and actually that's probably the most likely thing, and join the side of what could be good, depending on how the story goes. They could join Hell. I don't see why they would necessarily do that, but depending on where the story goes, if there's a bit of manipulation thrown in there and they get controlled somehow, then perhaps they could join Hell, or the quote-unquote evil side, or they could join their own side, and for their own best interests, not necessarily doing completely good or evil things within the story. I mean, the story pretty much up to this point has been following a sort of good versus evil narrative, I suppose. You had that duality with Ares and Athena. To break up that mold, Bellona is a decent god to choose, because she's not exactly good. She's not exactly an evil god either, necessarily. She sits somewhere in the middle because, well, she enjoys war, she probably enjoys causing death and carnage, but we hadn't seen her at all during the conflicts of, the previous versions of the story. There's probably a decent reason for that. Maybe she's showing some signs of restraint. She can show restraint, she can probably show mercy, and if she can show mercy, she can probably show compassion, and, well, then that means that she's not a completely cold-hearted killer, right? But if the story is going to be continuing with a good versus evil narrative above all else, what better way to continue that than by having Bellona face off against the Lord of Darkness himself, or self-proclaimed Lord of Darkness himself, Jonabog, right? Well, that's what's going to happen. I suppose we'll just have to wait and see what actually does happen with the story. Now, as we're talking about these adventures, these events Hi-Rez puts out, I do have to include a slash of cynicism because I don't like these things. The only event that Hi-Rez has put out that I've truly enjoyed that was an adventure was the very first one, the capture the flag thing. Other than that, I've not really cared for any of the other ones, and I've gotten bored of them very quickly, from Jingten's Mountain to the god-awful Racer. And so I don't have much high hopes for the actual content that will be included inside of these events themselves. But we'll see. Be interesting to know your thoughts and what you are hoping for the new story. Apparently, Hi-Rez has hired a new writer, so that should spice things up a bit. And if you are a bit bored or disappointed with the current story, then maybe you can actually see some improvements. We'll just have to wait and see what we're given. But that was the video, and if you enjoyed, as always, go ahead and leave a like. If you're new to the channel and want to see more content like this, well, you only need to hit that subscribe button, and Until the next video, have a very good day. I be proud, and I'll see you in the next one.